Story 1, Ben. A true story. I was with two of my friends, Ben and Nick, on holidays when it happened. We were in an isolated part of Greece, somewhere that doesn't show up on Google Maps for some reason, traveling down a long stretch of road in our hire car in search of the next major city to party in. After initially planning on driving through the night, we accepted that we had lost our way and it was getting too dark to continue, so we pulled into a gas station for directions on where we could stay. The old man handed us an old brochure of a nearby village and insisted we go check it out. Since we were completely lost, we were left with no other option. Something different, we thought, but just how different we could never have guessed as we took the next left turn and ventured into the headlight-lit darkness. The only form of lodging out there was in remote cabins, separated far apart from each other for privacy, we guessed. The self-contained cabin had a bathroom, kitchen, queen bed, and single bed, all that we needed for one night. Nick won the rock-off for the single bed, so Ben and I would be sharing Nick snores anyway, so I was cool with that. One feature of the cabin that unnerved me, however, was the large square curtainless window that occupied the entire area of the vacant wall. It bothered me especially now because night had fallen and the light was on inside, so it acted as a sort of two-way mirror. Anyone wearing black could easily look through without being noticed. We made plans to go out that night to the village bar, have some drinks, tell stories, and see where the night takes us. We discussed that would leave the key under the rock by the front porch, and if we were to split up, whoever came home first would leave the door open for the others to get in. "Why don't you say it louder so everyone can hear where we hide it?" Ben joked, to which Nick found the pleasure in yelling it at the top of his lungs. Luckily, our cabin was isolated out here, and there was no one close by. I thought to myself as we drove off, it was a surprisingly fun night at the bar. We had plenty of shots of the local drink, ouzo, until the bar staff informed us we had drunk their stocks dry. It was cheap, though, in Greece. The next thing I knew, it was late, the bar was closing, and we had lost Ben. He must have left without us, though I don't remember him telling us he was leaving. I thought, slightly concerned by him acting out of character, so we left without him, taking the car. I need to piss badly. I adjusted in my seat as the car headlights momentarily lit up the cabin and we turned into the driveway to the sound of gravel crunching under the tires. We checked under the rock for the key. It was gone. We tried the door handle. Locked. What the fuck? We both looked at each other. Ben must have come home before us, and he's locked us out. Ben, open up. We need to piss. Hurry up, Ben. We banged on the door. I heard a stumbling inside, like someone literally crawling awkwardly on all fours out of bed. Damn, he must be drunk. I can't hold this piss in anymore, I said, as Nick and I went to separate sides of the cabin to urinate as Ben finally opened the door. It felt good urinating, but that feeling was harshly interrupted by what caught my attention on the large window, sending a large shiver up my spine. There was this long, thin set of handprints, only visible on the window from the mist outside. It looked longer than any human's hand, but much, much thinner. Holy shit. But I quickly cleared my mind of the scary and irrational images it was creating, as it was certainly just a regular human hand that had been smeared, causing the illusion that it's longer, right? Either way, it occurred to me that someone or something might have been watching us. I hurriedly finished my business and rushed inside. We are not turning the light on, I thought, to prevent anything from looking in at us. As I locked the front door and we went straight to bed, Nick fell asleep instantly, snoring before his head had even hit the pillow, and after a few minutes of tolerating Nick's inconsistent snore, my drooping eyes fell weary, so I closed them. As soon as they shut, I couldn't help but get the burning feeling that Ben's eyes had opened suddenly and were staring straight at me menacingly. My body rose in temperature and my heart beat quicker as I sensed this, as if Ben was holding his breath, vision fixated on me angrily. Through the darkness, sorry if we hadn't gone home with him, geez. Why would he be so angry? After a few minutes of calming myself from this irrational fear, I drifted off to sleep. Knock, 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 open up. You said you wouldn't lock it. Thud, thud, thud. It grew louder. Open the door, it's fucking cold out here. This was the single scariest moment of my entire life, and the most paralyzing sensation swept over my entire body. It was Ben at the door. Suddenly there was a movement in the sheets next to me. Something stirring. I got up faster than I ever have in my life and ran to the door. Nick had awoken and come to the same horrific realization soon as me, right behind me and kicking the door open and fleeing outside to the car. Not once did we look back. I started the car and beckoned Ben to follow. But he didn't know what had happened. Still facing into the room, he turned on the light to see inside. This was a true story. It really happened. You can ask Nick if you don't believe me. But I wouldn't ask Ben. He doesn't say much anymore after the incident, and whenever questioned about what he saw that night, his face turns pale and expressionless, and he will immediately shut the nearest curtain. Story 2. The Lodge. I live in a small town in upstate New York. No more than 600 people sleep here, and let's call it home. I moved up from Brooklyn about 5 years ago and immediately fell in love with its charm, its closeness, and, as is the subject of this tale, its mystery. One day, not long ago, as I was walking down the town's only avenue past a used book shop that only sells books you've never heard of, and across from the building that doesn't seem to know what it wants to be, sandwich shop, art gallery, grocery, all in recent memory, I tripped on one of many uneven sidewalk slabs. As I picked my possessions and myself up off the biting fall cement, I noticed a large sign above an abandoned building I must pass daily, a building that was not out of the ordinary to me at all. The sign was what gave me that start of unfamiliarity, as it declared the building a Masonic lodge in its old, carefully flowering print. It was the first time I had seen the sign on this building in my then 4 years of inhabitance. It's probably just an old sign someone found and hung up there, I thought to myself. But even as that thought resounded around my head, I could tell that it wasn't quite right. No, there was another motive behind the appearance of that sign, and now I was determined to find it. I went about asking locals, those who had lived there longer than my years, that is, if they had ever seen the sign before, who owned the building. Had they ever seen anyone go into it? That sort of thing. To my surprise, not one of the questioned had noticed the sign, and when I pointed it out to them, they were visibly startled at its unannounced appearance. You see, in this town, no one does anything without someone else hearing about it. Something as large as a building-wide sign going up would have been remembered by at least one person, but no one could recall it. As for my inquiries of ownership and use of the building, No one knew who held the deed, and no one had ever seen anyone go into or out of it. I decided that I would have to investigate myself. Obviously, the best way of doing this would be to break into the building at night, armed with only a flashlight and a tape recorder to document my findings. In hindsight, I'm not exactly sure why I chose the night to explore this old, abandoned would-be Masonic lodge. Perhaps the writing of a story was sneaking into my subconscious. So on a Saturday night I approached the mysterious building and, upon trying the door, found it unlocked. My flashlight showed me nothing of interest on the ground floor. All that decorated the bare rooms was dust and decay. Then my light shone upon the staircase, and I knew that my investigation had only just begun. Upon mounting the second floor, I knew immediately that there was something here. Maybe not intelligence, but a distinct presence of something strange hung from the walls and dripped from the ceiling. At first I thought that the second floor was just as void of furnishings as the first, and that's when my flashlight shone into the room. I instantly thought that I had somehow switched on a light. Hundreds of splinters of brightness shone all around me. Half a second later I realized I was staring into a room of mirrors. The walls were covered in paneled mirrors. The ceiling was plastered with decorative glass and reflective metal. I don't know a lot about Masonic lodges, but I had the distinct feeling that this was a unique feature. Just as I was going to inspect my sudden doppelgangers, I noticed something distinctly odd in my leftmost reflection. Everything looked normal about me at first, but I knew something was off. Only when I had shown my flashlight directly at my reflection could I realize that the illusion I was seeing was nothing of the sort. My reflection had no eyes, just pits of black. Gazed back at me from that mirror, I felt my heart skip a beat, and then my brain immediately contained it with reason. It must be a shadow from the flashlight, insisted my logic. But I knew that no shadow would be so deep, no shadow would be so still in the light from my shaking arm. And as soon as that epiphany was reached, this startling event repeated itself. Now the reflection to my right was also missing its eyes just as irrefutably. It was at that point that I completely lost the resolve that I had worked so hard to keep. Turning away from those frightening reflections, I ran quickly to the room I came from. Turning from door to door, I scrambled for the stairs. At one point I was sure that the halls had become a maze, that I would never find the stairs. Just as this adrenaline-fueled insanity crossed my mind, I almost catapulted myself down the flight I had been looking for what now seemed like hours. Upon reaching the street, I looked at my watch. 5 minutes had passed since I entered the lodge. Just as I turned away from swinging the door shut, the final shock of my night bit into my retinas, as if the lodge would not let me leave without suffering a heart attack first. As I rotated away from that place, I saw two distinct pairs of eyes staring back at me from the doorframe. Neither my feet nor my heart stopped running until I was safely locked up at home, and it took me hours to fall asleep that night. Every time I would start to drift off, I would see those eyes looking back at me from a corner, from the ceiling, from the floor. The next day my neighbor asked me if I had ever found the answers I was looking for about the lodge. No, but I think my curiosity is good for now, I responded lamely. By next week the sign was again gone. To this date I never walk by that building unless I have to. Far away from the unknown bookstore, far away from the confused storefront. That is where I want to be. Story 3, Restless You woke up to a faint clattering nose, wondering what it was. For a moment, you pondered just sleeping through it, but considering it awakened you, it could be a better idea to check it out and rid yourself of a potential cause of insomnia in the process. Putting on your slippers, you made your way to the light switch. The harsh change of atmosphere drove any leftover drowsiness from your head as the bulb in the center of the room flickered to life. The tapping and clanging continued as you listened to it, trying to identify the source of the noise. It seemed to be coming from somewhere below. Is there someone in my house? You wondered while your heart started to pound. Careful, trying not to make a noise, you grabbed the broom, the first thing to come to mind, from in the corner of your room. It was firm and rigid in your hands and would surely make for a decent weapon. With every step you took, you were worried the next stair would creak. With every step you took, you were once again relieved that it didn't. While slowly making your way down, your foot touched down on the carpet in the hallway. Having cleared the most risky obstacle, cautiously you snuck towards the living room. The noise got louder and louder as you came closer, leaning slightly towards the door, ready to take a peek and see whether someone was rummaging through your belongings. The moonlight shone into the room, illuminating someone sitting near the display case, trying to get to the adornments and jewelry inside. The case was still closed. Much to your relief, the thief hadn't had the time to open it up and steal any valuable belongings before waking you up. A sudden reflection of light alerted you to some tool the stranger seemed to be holding. Tap, tap, tap. With the burglar preoccupied, you considered your chances and tightened your grip on the solid broomstick. It was well within your right to defend your own property, and, having made up your mind, you quietly snuck in. While lifting the broom above your head, you must have made a noise, since the intruder, aware of the danger, suddenly turned around to face you. Caw, caw. A flash of reflected light blinded you, making you cover your eyes and stumble backwards. You caught a glimpse of something, but it wasn't the tool you expected to see. What was it? You stepped back through the door into the hallway to create some distance between the intruder and yourself before opening your eyes again. What you saw in front of you upon doing so wasn't human. One half of its face was concealed in darkness, but the other was illuminated. A magpie's head, made from a dark, almost black metal, looked at you with eyes made out of gemstones. The metal had many seams and crevices, causing it to move in an inappropriately natural manner as its head tilted. The rubies in its eye sockets, a bloody shade of red, didn't seem dead or inanimate. Instead, a maleficent intelligence seemed to house behind them, not at all associated with the human body wearing the monstrous piece of armor. The magpie spread its arms, and you recognized the scraping, clanging noise you heard earlier. All kinds of necklaces and jewelry seemed to hang down from the bird's arms, making it look as if the creature had wings. An intimidating sight. As it slowly stepped towards you, its beak opened itself, giving birth to a horrific nose call. It reached for you, trying to close its hands around your neck. Suddenly coming to your senses, you smacked it on its head with the broom as hard as you could. The wood broke on the hard metal, and a painful feeling shot up through your arms, making you drop the useless remains. You ran away towards the kitchen, reaching for a knife, while the magpie with its ringing metal wings chased after you. Grabbing the largest knife you could find, you turned around. There the creature was, in all its vile glory. You reacted quickly, driving the knife into the vulnerable area of the chest, right under where the metal ended. For a moment, all seemed lost as the creature didn't even stagger and instead pecked at your face, determined to cut it up. Slowly, however, the massive metal bird began to collapse, sinking to the ground. One last time it looked at you with deadly intent, but then the presence in its eyes faded away, escorted by a loud rattle as it fell. Relieved, you let go of the dangerous utensil and sat down on the floor, as far away from the dead body as you could, letting go of your bated breath. You glanced back at the bird, suddenly noticing something was wrong. Its metal parts were melting. You were all too late with your keen observation as you suddenly felt a freezing sensation on your skin. The cold steel agonizingly slowly flowed up your back, over your shoulders, up your neck. You tried to wipe it off, but it stuck to your hands and continued its way to your face. You screamed, yelled, begged of it to let go of you, to leave you be. You rolled over the floor, kicked and clawed at the pearly droplets creeping towards you, all in vain. The liquid reached your eyes, forcing its way in between your eyelids when you closed them. The cold metal poured into your mouth and filled your ear tubes until you could hear nothing but your own heartbeat, see nothing but darkness, and taste nothing but the unpleasantly cold metal folding itself around your teeth. You tried to breathe, but you couldn't get air. Slowly, your consciousness slipped away, leaving you in a dreamlike state as the world around you became visible again in a contemptuous shade of red, and a hunger awakens within you. One that can only be satisfied through the most precious of valuables. That is your story. It has become part of ours now, like you have become part of us. We stand on the rooftop as our wings jingle in the wind, and a raw, victorious chant echoes over the city, striking fear into the hearts of the wealthy. We are the magpie, beware our greed. Story 4. Salvation. In Edmonton, Alberta, there is a hotel called the Conterra off of Jasper Avenue and 109th Street. During the night, go here and ring the doorbell. Should you be let in, look to see who the guard on shift is. If the man looks in his mid-20s, yet the hair on his head and face both are white as snow, take a seat beside the security desk. If it is any other guard on shift, leave and return in a week's time. Here you must wait. The guard will say not a word, nor answer any questions you may ask. He hears you, but he will not respond. He will only give you a sad look, as if knowing something terrible waits. When the time is 2:52 a.m., the guard will rise to perform a patrol of the building. Follow him only on this patrol. If you follow him at any time before 2:52 a.m., you will be forcefully removed from the hotel and lose your chance. Say not a word as you walk the halls behind the guard. He will check that the rooms are all locked, as well as patrol the stairwells. When you both reach the 5th floor, you will notice that it is remarkably colder than the last 4. Yes, the floor is deafeningly quiet. It is normal. When the guard secures all the rooms on the floor, you will both stop at a door that seems much older than any other door you've yet seen in the hotel. This is room 512. Only this particular guard has access to this room. Take note of the key of which the guard uses to unlock this door. It will be important later. At this point, the guard will open the room for you and allow you to pass through. It will be quite dark, but do not yet be afraid. The worst is yet to come. Take a deep breath, close your eyes, and step through the doorway. Do not open them until you hear the door close behind you, for seeing the transition can be maddening. It will be almost unbearably hot. Here, you will find yourself in a long hallway with numerous turns. There will be 13 doors lining this hallway. Do not open any of them. Take note which door has a splash of white paint on it. This will be critical soon. When you reach the end of the hallway, you will find yourself in the living room of the suite. In each corner of the room you should see a tall figure, each with burnt flesh. They should all be sitting on the floor, hugging their legs with their heads upon their knees and facing their respective corner. Their fingers will be chewed away until their tips are nothing but sharp, bony talons. Do not address these figures. Do not touch them. They are her guardians. In the center of this room there she should be. She will be sitting in an old, ragged reclining chair. It is impossible to say how she will look, for her appearance changes for everyone. She should, like her guardians, be asleep. Do not awaken her from her slumber for now. You have time to rest. There will be food and drink set out upon the coffee table in front of her, and you are welcome to it. Do not partake in the pie, however, for it will numb your legs. Should you be so bold, take a look outside the window. It will resemble a hellish version of the avenue which the hotel is on. The buildings will be burnt-out husks of their former selves. The river valley beyond will be dry and cracked. Fire will appear to be on the horizon, and the ever-burning sun will resemble blood set ablaze. Should you stay for hours on end, you will find no reprieve from the heat. There is no night here. Now look to the streets. You will find the same figures there as the ones in the room. They, however, are awake, shuffling, screaming, and wailing. From their back maws they have no eyes in their sockets, but by some twisted means they can still see. Take care not to attract their attention, for they will follow you back to our world, and this venture will be for naught. When you are ready, stand before her and speak clearly these words. Save me, mother, please. Say nothing else, and wait. You should start to hear her breathe. At this point, one of two things will happen. Remember the key which the guard opened this room with. Should she place that same key on the table in front of you, count yourself lucky. Should she, however, place a different key upon the table, you will need to give her an offering. A knife that was not previously on the table will now be present. The blade will be rusted, blooded. Take this knife and sever a finger, placing it beside the key. Wait. If she places the same key as the guards on the table, you may take it and leave. If not, remove another finger. This will only occur a maximum of 4 times before the right key will be produced. Once the key is in your possession, she will once again return to her haunted slumber. Now pay attention, for you only have a short amount of time. The guardians will be stirring. Now, slowly they will rise from their sleep and turn in towards the room to face you. If they see you, they will slaughter you. Run, you have 10 seconds before they will fully turn from their corners. Remember that door with the white splash of paint? That is the door you will need to use to remove yourself from this hell. If you hear screaming from behind you, the guardians are fully awake and are coming. You don't have much time. Find the white marked door and get out. You will find yourself inexplicably outside your own home, exactly a week after you entered the hotel. Keep the key on you at all times, wherever you go. One day in the future, distant or near, a ragged old door with the number 777 will appear wherever you happen to be. Use the key and open this door immediately. Leave anyone with you behind. Wherever it leads, it will be far better than what is about to happen to this world. Story 5. Never answer the door at night. My father grew up on an Indian reservation in South Dakota. It is a place with few trees and even fewer people, and there has been little development since. The place was settled many years ago. The people live in clusters of nearly uniform houses that were built by the government, and the only place to go shopping or see a movie is nearly 2 hours away. It's hot in the summer, cold in the winter, and sometimes the wind blows for days without letting up. Even now, the people there have to be tough to survive. You look out for your friends, you help your neighbors, and you don't forget your family. His grandmother died when he was very young, but he's told me that he retains one particularly vivid memory of her. It was winter, and they were at the house together in the early evening, and she was cooking in the kitchen. How he played with a deck of cards in the front room, he can't quite recall what she looked like, but he can still remember the smell of the food that she was making that night. It's funny how memory works that way. His parents, grandfather, and 2 older sisters had caught a ride into Rapid City to buy supplies before the first big storms came through. So it was just the 2 of them. She went on cooking and he went on playing with those cards until he lost track of time, and it was pitch black outside. There was a knock at the door, not a loud knock like the police, or the friendly kind of knock that a neighbor uses when he's stopping by to borrow something, just a slow, quiet tapping on the door. Tap, 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 just like that. Naturally, he figured his family had made it back from the city, so he went right over to let them inside before he had a chance to reach the door. His frail, elderly grandmother grabbed him by the arm and pulled him away like he was a rag doll. Never answer the door at night, she told him, covering his mouth so he couldn't say anything. He could feel her arm trembling. There was no more knocking, but my father couldn't shake the sense that there was someone familiar standing on the other side of that door, waiting to be let inside. When she finally let go of him, he asked her why she had stopped him. Sometimes the dead try to come home, she said. There were tears in her eyes. His family didn't return that night, and there was no phone service, so they couldn't call. When they made it back the following day, he learned that his grandfather had died from a heart attack during the trip. My father never said anything about the knocking, and neither did his grandmother. It was like it had never happened. His grandmother wasn't the same after that and followed her husband to the grave. Just a few months later, my father was 6 years old. It was much later when my father found himself alone at night during a particularly bad winter storm, the wind howling outside, and the rest of his family stranded miles away. They had gone into the city that morning and wouldn't be able to come back until the storm let up and the roads were cleared. Eventually the electricity went out and the only light came from the stove they used for heating. The worst part of the storm lasted a few hours, but finally it got quiet outside as the wind slowed and the windows stopped rattling. Then the knock came again, that same tapping at the door from years before, like fingers just barely brushing against it. My father couldn't bring himself to look out the window to see if anyone was standing outside, but for some reason he found himself drawn to the door, like he had to open it. It was only when he felt the cold from beneath the door on his bare feet that he stopped. He called outside, asking who was there. "It's me," came the voice from the other side of the door. "Let me inside. It's cold." He recognized the voice since it belonged to his eldest sister. He had his hand on the doorknob when his grandmother's words came back to him, and the feel of her hand gripping his arm. Never answer the door at night. There were many things he could have asked his sister at that moment. He could have asked where his parents were, or why he hadn't heard the car pull up when they were drop-off. He could have even asked why she needed to knock at all. They didn't lock their doors on the reservation. He didn't ask her any of those things. Instead, he told her to go around to the back and he would let her inside before he could say anything else, or even think anything else. He heard the knocking start at the back door, like she had been there the entire time. Instantly, tap, tap, tap. He didn't open the door and spent the rest of the night curled up on the floor. His family had tried to return home earlier that evening and got into a car accident in the snow. His father had broken his leg into places. His eldest sister had died, mangled in the wreck. He didn't tell anyone what had happened, but he knew in his heart that sometimes the dead do try to come home. My father was not afraid of what might have happened that night. When he told me the story, he was sorrowful. He always regretted that he lost his opportunity to see his sister one last time. I know that's why he went home by himself and waited when my mother died. You don't forget your family. I know he heard that knocking on the door. Tap, 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 like he remembered from his youth. I also know that he forgot something very, very important. The fear in his grandmother's voice on that cold winter night, and the way she held him with all her strength. Never answer the door at night. When we found him the next day, the front door was wide open, and he had been torn limb from limb. There were no footprints in the snow. Story 6. The mortuary. I was surrounded by dead bodies. Being a mortician, I was used to it, of course. It used to creep me out a little when I first got the job, but eventually you get used to it, and it just feels like another day at the office. After a while, I started talking to them like live patients, which is actually a norm in my profession. You might think it distressing, working with dead people all the time, but I actually enjoy it. In fact, I find it rather peaceful. Yes, it's much better than dealing with the rambunctious eccentricities of the living. The dead have no complaints. They all act like model patients. My name is Mark, and I've been doing this for nearly 10 years. I work at the Cranhausen Funeral Home outside Detroit's North End, one of the oldest in the state of Michigan. The cemetery has graves with internment dates going back into the 18th century. The building itself is an old Victorian-era mansion, converted sometime in the early 19th century. Signs of antiquity show all throughout the ancient carpentry and masonry, giving it the atmosphere of an earlier time, when this region was almost entirely void of inhabitants. Our story starts in late December. In the winter time, when the ground would freeze, we would have to wait until next year to begin burying the bodies. So until then, the caskets would be temporarily placed in another old building in the cemetery for storage until spring closed in. It was my job to roll them out and place them in their temporary resting place. We generally tried to do this in the evening, as the sight of caskets being moved around seemed to make onlookers feel a bit uneasy. I remember how cold it was when I would push that dolly loaded with a casket through the path to the back of the cemetery. I hated it. It was always so cold, and the dolly was heavy, not wanting to cooperate. Sometimes, when I was loading those caskets into the old storage building, I could hear the loud creaking of the ancient lumber, accompanied by an uneasy feeling of being. Watch the dead never bothered me, but there was something about that old building which I found rather unsettling. It had no windows, and the air inside was rank with rot and decay. The smell of mildew was so potent it was nearly unbearable. It seems as though I wasn't the only one who didn't like that place either. I was working on embalming one of my patients. As I said earlier, talking to the dead is common for me, even though it's a one-sided conversation. As I worked, I was explaining to him I was gonna put him up in the storehouse until the ground thawed, and this was the first time my imagination got the best of me. 'Cause I swear to you I heard him tell me not to take him there. I laughed to myself about it. 'Cause after all, why would the dead care where they're resting at? It's not like being buried in dirt is any better than laying in an old building. Then came spring, and with it the ground thawed out. That meant it was time to start moving the caskets to their permanent resting place in the cemetery. It was a grueling task to perform, even though the obstacles of ice and snow were gone. Those caskets and their macabre contents weigh quite a bit, and moving them by myself was hard work no matter what the weather was like. For this reason, we only did 2 or 3 in the mornings to save the rest of the day for my normal duties. It was early in the morning in late March. The exact day I cannot remember. It was still rather cold out. Despite the misleading sight of fresh green grass, I grabbed the dolly and began the lone walk to the storage building near the cemetery. I kicked along the path, silently resenting having to perform this grisly task. I had other work to do. Uneasy feeling, I put the dolly next to the rack with the casket I needed and began sliding the casket over. The old building was creaking loudly as I worked, first one end, then the other. I finally got it in place when my imagination started up again. I thought I heard a whisper saying, "Get out." Looking behind me, I saw nothing there and shrugged it off. Getting ready to make my way back out, just then I heard a voice loudly yell the word "go." As rational thinking was being replaced by fear, I quickly shoved the dolly out the door, following closely behind it. I felt better just being back outside, and whatever I had heard quickly became irrelevant. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it really was a ghost, and they just wanted to be left alone. As I was mulling these thoughts around in my head, I heard another loud creak, followed by a loud crash. At first, I was scared to turn around. It was so loud, it took me a moment to realize I was okay. When my heart rate started to calm down, I finally looked behind me. The old storage building had collapsed into a pile of rubble. All that remained now was a formless mound of broken boards, glass, and some nails. If it had happened just 1 minute sooner, I would have died right then and there. Then I started thinking, was that why I had heard that voice? Were my dead friends in there trying to warn me the old house was about to collapse? I think about it a lot, and there's too many coincidences to come to any real conclusions. But I did get one thing out of the whole experience. If a place gives me the creeps, I stay away. Story 7, The Children on the Stairs. I was doing a job for a friend of a friend. I was only charging half what I'd normally charge, but I was doing the job over just 2 nights, meaning I wasn't making too much of a loss. There wasn't a lot in the way of material outlay either. It was simple enough. strip out the plaster in the nursery of an old house and replaster it. I'd have my mate with me, so it wasn't too big of a job. I could have done it in a single day and night, but it was better to say tonight's just in case. When I saw the place, the first thing I had in my head was, why do they only want one room replastered? I hadn't met the owner. Otherwise, I might have asked. The whole place was falling down, a total disaster if you asked me, though it would have been a grand old building if it was done up properly. As it turned out, I ended up needing both nights after all. My mate Charlie left after the first night, but I'll get around to that in a minute. There was a story about this house, though I wasn't sure at first if it was true or not. The story went that a family had lived there some time before the Second World War, a family with 4 children. One night the father had come home from his job at the bank to find a silent house. He called out to his wife and kids, but there was no answer. On going upstairs to the nursery, the man found a bloodbath. The floor, the walls, even the ceiling, everything was slick with blood, and in the middle of the floor, a jumble of bloody limbs and torsos. The mother was nowhere to be found. The father, in his grief, hanged himself from a tree in the park across the road. The strangest part was, when the police arrived, they couldn't find any of the children's heads, but like I say, this was before the war, and it was just a story people told around there. The house had been lived in until recently, so I understood, but I couldn't tell you who had been there. Now about Charlie. He's a big bloke, and not the sort of person would picture getting scared over nothing. But that first night, at about 10:30 p.m., he suddenly stopped, still as a statue, the rotten plaster board shaking in his hands. Did you hear that? What? Like feet running up and down the stairs. No, it was like feet running on the stairs. I didn't hear anything. Charlie, I thought about teasing him, but stopped myself. Charlie is a big bloke, and he doesn't have a sense of humor. Little feet, he said, carefully putting down the plaster board. Charlie walked over to the door and looked out. You're not thinking about that story, are you? I asked. His head whipped round. What story? Nothing. What happened here, Bill? Something happened here, didn't it? Something bad. The landing was dark. I could see the top of the lower staircase, the ivory ball on the newel post connected to the mahogany banister, the deep shadow of the stairwell, and the bottom step of the upper flight of stairs. The rest was dark, little feet. Charlie was muttering, without saying another word. Charlie bolted out of the room, whacked the light switch on at the top of the stairs, flooding the scene with light, and galloped down the steps, almost flying down them. I heard the front door crash open, and that was the last I saw of Charlie for a very long time. He hadn't bothered to shut the front door, so down I went and shut it for him. Then I went back up the stairs, swore under my breath, shook my head, and got back to work. The second night was tough going. I should have gone back there during the day, but it was my wife's birthday, and I had driven her to a spa out in Hemel Hempstead, and had to wait around to drive her back again. In the end, I got to the house at about 10 p.m. I know it putting extra pressure on myself, knowing that plaster was best applied during the day. The room was just as I had left it. All the old wallboards were gone. The new wallboards were up, the seams taped, the wooden battens nailed in place. I got the buckets and started mixing the undercoat. It was around 2 a.m., and I was almost finished skimming the last section. The battens had been removed and lay in a pile in one corner. It might have been the coffee, but I was feeling a little edgy, and I thought I heard the ceiling creak overhead. I got back on with skimming the plaster down and thought nothing of it. But then I heard the ceiling creak again. I told myself it was an old house, and the floorboards were warped. But it didn't do anything to calm my nerves. At about 2:20 a.m. something made me go out onto the landing. While I was standing there holding my breath, the trowel shaking in my hand, my eyes fell on the ivory balls on the newel posts. There were 2 of them on the landing, as well as one at the top of the upper flight and one at the end of the lower flight, for altogether, and with a decorator's eye began absent-mindedly to compare the 2 on the landing. They weren't identical, and it started to bother me. As I got closer to them, I realized 2 things. First of all, that there were very fine zigzag lines running across them, and second, that they weren't quite the right color to be ivory. The ceiling creaked again, loudly. I ran down the stairs, just as Charlie had done the night before, and sprinted down the street to my van. I had my phone pressed to my ear even as I turned the key in the ignition. Something moved in the nursery window. "What service do you require?" "Hello." It took me a moment to catch my breath. "I want to report some human remains," I said. "Bonus stories. Story 1. He leads them. As you learn things, you notice things. As you notice things, you learn things. As you learn more, more becomes real to you, and as more becomes real to you, the more you notice." As I write this, I sit at my desk trembling. This all started with that stupid game. "Play it," he said. "It will be fun," he said. My best friend told me to play this well-known horror game called Slender, and I figured, hey, why not? Sounds fun. And it was. I played it quite a few times that night, and that got me on to playing another horror game called Amnesia. I could hardly play that, because I've always had the worst nerves. Then my girlfriend showed me creepypasta, making fun of my nerves, and that's when it started going downhill. I read it, for some reason compelled to. I could only read it at night, past midnight, and after I found it, it showed up everywhere. I figure it was the normal thing to do, right? It probably was. And unless I'm completely different, I was scared shitless about everything. I still am. But that's only because I started noticing them. I look out my window and see them swarming around my apartment, the ones I read and watched. I don't know if it's in my head or real. As I write this, I can hear the banging on the steps leading to the front door of my apartment. The statue in my bedroom window is staring at me, and I've already smashed my VCR and painted over my mirrors. I hide in my covers every night with the light turned on, willing myself to keep my eyes open and sleep with them that way. It never works. But I still find myself alive and well the next morning. But at night I hear them, I see them, I can feel their presence. When you know them, you notice them. I shouldn't even be writing this. If it's not my imagination, then I could be putting you in serious danger, because it wasn't until I started thinking it could be real that I noticed them, and he leads them. The image from nightmares long past and deeply forgotten. His very form takes on what he knows will scare me the worst at any given moment. As I type, one can feel him reading over my shoulder, grinning at my rising fear, but not acting. Oh no, never acting on my fear. He feeds on it, and he knows it will never leave me, because when the fear leaves me, that's when he will devour me, and that is what keeps my fear in me. He makes me keep writing, holding my chair in place whenever I try and leave, not letting he close the document. He wants me to tell you. He wants me to let you think it's real. As you learn about them, you notice them as you notice them. You learn about them as you learn more about them. They become real as they become real. They notice you as they notice you. He leads them to you as he leads them to you. You can only stare as you stare. He smiles at you as he smiles at you. It's too late. Story 2. Small Town Mysteries. No one knows where it came from. No one knows why it showed up in our little town, of all places. The only thing we knew for sure was that it was bizarre. The statue appeared in the town square about 2 weeks ago. It sits in the middle of a section of grass decorated with a handful of park benches that creates a cul-de-sac for the town's mayor's office, police station, and courthouse. At first, everyone thought it was something dropped off by a local artist trying to cause a stir and make a name for himself. He denied it and didn't cause a fuss when crews loaded it into a truck and took it to the dump. When the statue returned to the exact same spot 2 days later, the people of the town thought maybe it was a prank by someone in the next town over. 2 small towns only a few miles apart tend to have some pretty intense high school sports rivalries, and those tend to produce the weirdest and sometimes most elaborate pranks. No one from that town claimed responsibility either, and the statue was removed again. The next day, the statue mysteriously appeared once more. I decided it was time to go take a look. There was a decent crowd surrounding the 8-foot-tall obelisk. There isn't much that goes on in a small southern town, and a mystery like this was bound to have everyone talking. The sculpture was shaped like a man. It stood upright and had 2 arms and 2 legs. No tail or horns or claws. The limbs were too long, and it had 6 long fingers on each hand. The head was smooth and bald, with 1 large eye, a wide bulbous nose, and a too long mouth. It was as strange could get. Some people thought it was funny, some thought it was creepy, but we all were unsettled by it. The monument drew a near constant crowd for a few days before people started disappearing. People go missing. Everyone understands that, despite how tragic it is, however, highly unusual for 12 people to vanish without a trace in the span of a week from a town with less than 4,000 residents. The statue was put on the back burner by pretty much everyone, while the gossip switched to the possibility of a serial killer or human traffickers plaguing our little slice of utopia. Those that didn't forget the statue thought that it may be connected to the missing people, and they were written off as crazies. I think they're right. It's only a theory, and I could be wrong. I could be imagining things, but I swear the statue has moved. Not its place on the grass. I think it's changed position. I've been out to see it almost every day, and I swear its mouth was closed tight and its arms straight on its side. I would bet my life savings that when that thing first appeared it didn't hold its head cocked ever so slightly to the left. I don't think anyone else notices the changes. I don't think people are done disappearing. And I don't think that statue is a statue. Story 3. Super Mario, the Haunted Save. I was bored. I was super duper bored. It was January 4th, and my New Year's resolution was to finish all my video games by today. Now that I have done that, I had no new things to play all of the sudden. I got an email on my phone. I opened it. The email had no words in the from bar at the top. The subject was Get Old Bootleg SNES Cartridges. Only in today's e-auction, intrigued at the sound of new video games, I went to the e-auction. The first few games I had no clue what they were, so I sort of got bored watching the screen. I was about to close the site when I saw the text saying Bootleg Super Mario World pop up. I decided to get it and won. 2 weeks later, I got the Super Mario World cartridge in the mail. I was once again intrigued when I saw most of the label was torn off of the cartridge. The only letters not torn off were UE, R, M, R, and D. I immediately put all the letters together and tried to think of something. After a while, I came up with one word: murder. Obviously, I still put in the cartridge, something I still regret to this day. Not that I can feel depressed anymore. After all, doesn't the word on the cartridge say it all? I was going to stop here, but I suppose I can tell you how my fate came to be. After I put the cartridge in, the game started. Everything looked normal, except that the hills and the clouds had a slight reddish tinge to them. I opened the file selection, and there was a save file in the game already. The name of the file was Save File 1. I bet you weren't expecting that. Anyways, I loaded the file and went to the level with the first Yoshi in it. I was walking, and as you may expect, I have played Super Mario World some form or another, and I know that this wasn't here. There was a small red hill with a very dark red pipe on the top. The first thing somebody would think would be something in a video game can't hurt me. It's just a video game. Those people can keep believing that. At that time, I believe that too. So I went down the pipe. I thought it would be some bootleg glitch secret, but something was wrong when I was falling for around 30 seconds. When I hit the ground, Bowser was there watching me. I was seriously freaked, so I lunged for the power button. All of a sudden, text popped up on the screen saying you wouldn't want to do that, would you? And the power button was deactivated. Mario and Bowser were on screen, glaring straight at me. More text popped up saying you want a surprise? Here, and Bowser pulled out a portal gun. LOL. He blasted the floor under me, and then he blasted above the lava. You can probably figure out what happened next. To this day, I am a Boo guarding Bowser Castle. My home is in the 9th room. If any explorer finds my diary, share my story with the world. Story 4. Harebrain. I had recently spawned a new world in single-player Minecraft. Everything was normal at first as I began chopping down trees and crafting a workbench. I noticed something move amongst the dense fog. I have a very slow computer, so I have to play with a tiny render distance. I thought it was a cow, so I pursued it, hoping to grab some hides for armor. It wasn't a cow, though. Looking back at me was another character with the default skin, but his eyes were empty. I saw no name pop up, and I double-checked to make sure I wasn't in multiplayer mode. He didn't stay long. He looked at me and quickly ran into the fog. I pursued out of curiosity, but he was gone. I continued on with the game, not sure what to think. As I expanded the world, I saw things that seemed out of place for the random map generator to make to tunnels in the rocks, small perfect pyramids made of sand and the ocean, and groves of trees with all their leaves cut off. I would constantly think I saw the other player in the deep fog, but I never got a better look at him. I tried increasing my render distance to far whenever I thought I saw him, but it was to no avail. I saved the map and went on the forums to see if anyone else had found the pseudo-player. There were none. I created my own topic telling of the man and asking if anyone had a similar experience. The post was deleted within 5 minutes. I tried again, and the topic was deleted even faster. I received a PM from username Harebrine containing one word, stop. When I went to look at Harebrine's profile, the page for 100 forward, I received an email from another forum user. He claimed the mods can read the forum user messages, so we were safer using email. The emailer claimed that he had seen the mystery player too, and had a small directory of other users who had seen him as well. Their worlds were littered with obviously man-made features as well, and described their mystery player to have no pupils. About a month passed until I heard from my informant again. Some of the people who had encountered the mystery man had looked into the name Harebrine and found that name to be frequently used by a Swedish gamer. After some further information gathering, it was revealed to be the brother of Notch, the game's developer. I personally emailed Notch and asked him if he had a brother. It took him a while, but he emailed me back a very short message. I did, but he is no longer with us. Story 5. The tundra. The native villagers around these parts say that there's a stretch of tundra just north of here that is occupied by benevolent spirits. These spirits grant insight and warning to whoever visits them at night. Once the sun has disappeared entirely and left the world in jet darkness, I drove out to the middle of the frozen expanse of ice and waited, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever commanded these people's reverence. They send their children out, bundled in furs to keep from freezing, on the eve of their 15th birthday to seek an audience with these spirits. Once they have achieved this, the children run home to their parents to share the news. From then on, these children are considered adults in the village. Engaged couples visit this tundra on the night before their wedding. The entire village stays up all night awaiting their return, as it is upon their return that the couple either decides to proceed with their marriage or to abandon it. The elderly visit the tundra whenever they are sick or ailing, and often make their condition worse by staying all night in the cold. When they return, however, it is most often with an air of sheer serenity. So I waited, curious to see what phenomenon might inspire people so powerfully. I waited for hours, bundled in my parka and sitting on the hood of my pickup. I waited until I felt that I was going to freeze to death. Even in my thick clothing, I heard the spirit before I saw it. A crunching of snow in the silence made me jump off my truck and spin around. A hunched, gray-skinned man stood a few meters away. Sad, yellowed eyes stared back at me, set inside a skull from which sprouted only a few greasy hairs. He breathed heavily, with a rattle that shook his fragile rib cage, and one of his arms looked as if it had been messily broken and then neglected, allowing it to knit back together imperfectly. Badly scarred flesh marred his splayed legs. The man stared at me for perhaps 10 seconds, breathing in the frigid air and exhaling a sickly dribble of steam. Before disappearing, when I blinked my eyes, I spun around, looking for the man, but he was truly gone. Approaching where he had stood, I found a pair of bloody footprints in the snow. Frantic with fear, I got into my pickup and headed for the village as fast as the ice would allow. A few villagers were waiting for me when I arrived. knowing that I had gone out and curious as to what might happen. I hastily got out of my truck and, approaching the nearest villager, I demanded, "What is so benevolent about these spirits? What is so insightful? How do these spirits help you? What did you see?" He asked, the look on his face now mirroring the fear in mine. "I saw a man, horribly disfigured and desperately sick." I screamed into his face, and the rest of the villagers around us backed away a step. "Why, what does that mean?" I begged him. "The spirits show only one thing," the man explained. "They show their visitors a year in the future." Story 6. Call me tomorrow. Okay. Still no messages on my phone. I guess he wasn't going to call me back after all. I can't really blame him. Maybe I came on a bit too fast yesterday. I had noticed him long before he noticed me. His shiny black hair and unnatural blue eyes. I wasn't the only one watching him, that's for sure. His movements were elegant in a boyish way. And his smile, I would die for that smile. Still no messages. I thought about calling him. Maybe apologize for going too fast yesterday. I'm a coward, I know, but I just couldn't bring myself to dial his number. Besides, he'd promised he'd contact me when he's ready, so I'll wait. I'm patient, I know. I'll just casually stroll past his house, just to see if he's home. Maybe he's out. That would explain why he couldn't call me yet. He only lives half an hour away anyway. Maybe he's shy and is scared to call me. Silly boy. I'll go to him and tell him that he doesn't have to be scared, that I don't mind if he needs time. He lives pretty secluded in a farm on the outskirts of town. I can hear the sheep in the stables as I approach. My heart skips when I see there's lights burning inside. He must be there. He told me yesterday his parents would be gone for the weekend. They left him to look after the sheep for those days. Poor baby. That must be hard work. He was probably just too busy to call me. I'll have to stay here until his parents come back and help him take care of all those sheep. I knock on the door, but he doesn't answer. Maybe he fell asleep. The thought of his beautiful face, even more softened by sleep, makes me smile. I try the door. It's unlocked. There's hardly any crime around here, so I guess locking the door is not needed. I try to be as quiet as possible as I sneak through the house. I want to surprise him. I cringe at every creak the stairs make as I climb them. Finally, I've reached the bedroom, and I carefully open the door. There he is, lying in bed as I thought. Quietly, I switch on the night light on his desk so I can see his face. His blue eyes are open, staring into space, and his whole face is one bloody mess. His cheeks have been carved, the skin mostly removed and hanging loose on the sides of his face. He's missing his fingernails. They are laid out on the bed, carefully arranged. On his bare chest, words are carved. I look at him, my hands covering my mouth. He's still the same as I left him yesterday. He must have been so tired that he slept all day. How cute. I softly kiss his forehead, making sure I don't wake him. Then I write another message below the one on his chest, letting him know I'm here when he needs me. I leave the room, heading back outside. I think it's time for the sheep to go to sleep, and tomorrow I'll introduce myself to his parents. I'm sure they'll love me too. Story 7. Her name. It wasn't a big deal at first, you know. It was just another story online. one you'd read in the comments of a YouTube video designed to scaring you into posting it on 8 other videos. You know, the kind where you die a horrible death or your crush will reject you if you don't spread the word. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now it's the only thing I can think about. The comment started by saying that she hasn't left the poster alone in days, and by reading this, she come for you. I don't even remember the exact wording because it was late and I was tired and I'd seen 100 other comments like it before. I forgot all about it until she started coming after me. It started with little things, a flash in the corner of my vision, a strange shadow on the hallway floor. Then it got worse. I started to hear whispering when I was alone in the house, giggling, the sound of footsteps. I now know that she was teasing me, sort of like how a cat will clamp its paw over a mouse's tail and bat at it before it kills it. Mirrors were the worst. She liked to stand just out of frame when I was brushing my hair, so when I shifted my head to get the other side, she would be there, standing next to the bookshelf, with her long, tangled hair matted with blood falling down her shoulders, and that grin, oh God, that grin. Her teeth were always bloody. I was never sure if it was her blood or I don't even know. Every night it seemed to get worse. I would see her on my way to class, in the rear-view mirror of my car, dragging her talon-like fingernails across her own rotting flesh as I stared in abject terror. For a while I put it off to sleep deprivation, finals, you know, and she came to me. It was late, so late it was technically early. I couldn't sleep because all I could hear was her giggling. I covered my face with the pillow and shut my eyes tight. When I felt something cold on my hand, I was paralyzed with fear. It was sharp, and it was cold, and it was moving down my arm towards my elbow. "Come out to play," she said in that lilting, upsetting voice I'd heard one too many times before. I screamed and sat up, but she was gone. For the moment. My biggest mistake was when I talked to her. I'd just step out of the shower, and she was right there when I opened the curtains. I shrieked and stumbled back, and she leaned down to me. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you doing this?" She told me why. It was because I knew something about her. That altercation ended with a serious head injury that landed me in the hospital. That's where I am now. I can't take this anymore. I'm just one person. It's too much. I know what I have to do. I think I always knew. God, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her name is Nora. She should be there soon.